This episode of Brains on Games is all about conquering the land of Canaan. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to talk about a game that's all about becoming king of the land of Canaan. This is a game this is a preview actually of a game that's going to come up on Kickstarter later on in the spring. It was sent to me by the designer not too long ago, and the game is called Battle of Gog. This is a giant box that I'm not even sure if you can see on the camera how big this box is, but this is Gog. I feel like he's almost life-size. He's sitting beside me. His head's as big as my head is. But this is Gog, and the game is called Battle of Gog. Now, the box might change, the graphics, the components might change before this game gets released because this is a prototype. But Battle of Gog is a game that you can play with 2 to 4 players, age 10 and up, and you can play a game in about an hour to an hour and a half. Let's take a look at Battle of Gog. And the first thing I want to show you about this game is that the back of the box actually acts as a board. There's a piece inside, a foam insert that keeps everything perfectly flat, but once you take that insert out, there's a little lip around the edges that helps to keep the map tiles together because it's a game that you play with a modular board. You're going to put these little tiles one at a time on the back of the box, and this little lip around the outside holds everything together nicely. Here you should be able to see the majority of that game box that you're going to set up your modular board on. The back is divided up into a grid of 36 spaces, and you've got 36 of these tiles. And that's the first part of the game. Once you've rolled the dice to decide who the first player is going to be, each player is going to choose a corner. In a 2-player game, each player is choosing 2 corners where they're going to begin the game and start placing their soldiers. The first player draws one of those map tiles. They're going to be all face down at the beginning, so you don't know what you're going to get. And you begin placing those on the board. And eventually, each player one at a time is going to fill up this entire board with your map. There are a few things to know about on this board. There are some resources that include wood in the form of forests. There's food, which could be fish or wheat, or they've got a little buffalo. You might be able to see it on the little tile that I placed. And then there's gold. And those are the 3 resources that you're going to be collecting through the game in order to upgrade your cities and hire soldiers and increase their training. And here you can see I've laid out all of the tiles on the board. The only real rule is that if you've got a tile with water on it, that water has to line up with water on another tile if possible. Otherwise, you can place it however you'd like. There are a couple of symbols that I didn't mention. Some of the food tiles are actually turkeys. There's a couple of turkey spaces. You get some volcanoes where you can't attack a soldier who's on a volcano. There are some treasure chests, which we'll talk about. There's a symbol for a scroll. And there are camels, which I didn't mention. The camels allow you to trade one resource for another, to switch those around a little bit. The final type of space that I didn't mention are these ruins, and the ruins will increase the defense of one of your soldiers by 1 if they happen to be on that space. You've got these 2 miniatures here in the middle. One of these is called the Angel of Retribution, and the other is Gog, in fact. And I don't know if you can see him very closely, but the dark one is Gog, and the lighter one is this Angel of Retribution. If this angel is adjacent to one of your cities, that city cannot gather resources, but Gog protects cities from the influence of that angel. So if Gog comes along, he can stop the effect of that angel who might be standing beside one of your cities. Once you've got the board set up and you place Gog and the angel on those 2 out of the 4 center spaces in the board, you can start placing your soldiers in the corner. So in a 2-player game, you have 2 corners to choose from. You're going to place 3 soldiers. Each has to have the number 1 facing up. Now, the idea here is that your soldiers become more powerful the higher the number is on the top of the die. you can pay resources to slowly upgrade them until you've got a 6 on the top, which is the most powerful soldier that you can have. And if this soldier who has a number 6 on the top lands on a space that has a soldier with a number 2, say, the soldier with the number 2 goes away and the 6 becomes a 4. You just subtract the strength of the other soldier once you're involved in some sort of a battle. Here I've set up a 2-player game of Battle of Gogs. We've got the red player down here in one corner, the white player up here on the top. And once you get into the game, what you're trying to do is take over this land, take over the map. And there's 3 ways that you can win the game. You can collect all 5 of these scroll tiles. We'll talk about how you can gather those. You can place a soldier in all 4 corners of the map. That would allow you to win right away. Or you can destroy all of your opponent's cities, which would make you the winner of the game. So there's 3 different ways to win. And the turns are divided up into 4 different phases. The first phase is all about gathering resources and trading resources. And you can really only do that once you've got a city to put those resources in. Each player, once they begin building cities, has a maximum of 5 of each different resource that they can have on hand. And you've got these resource tiles. There's stacks of them that come in the game. You've got wood and food and gold, like I said, is the 3rd resource. You're not going to have a city on the first turn. So on the first turn, you're not going to really, until cities are built, you're not going to be able to gather those resources or trade them. That's the other thing about this game. You can trade resources with the other players. We found in a 2-player game that didn't happen very often because you only have one opponent you're battling against, and my son was not really generous with his resources. We discovered that once we started playing, it turned out that food was a really, really important resource. I didn't realize how much more important that resource was than the others, and he had a bit more food than I did, and we'll talk about what happened as a result. Once you're done gathering and trading, if you have a city in which you can do that, you can buy some things or upgrade the things that you already have. You might spend some resources to buy some kind of an ability which gives you a power that you can use throughout the game. One of the ones that came up in our game was this shield, this defense ability, which means that if someone's trying to attack your city, their soldiers need to be 1 level higher than the level of your city. There's this ambush ability. See if I can put this right side up for you. The ambush ability, once it's played, it's discarded and shuffled back into the ability card deck. That allows the player who plays it to place a soldier anywhere on the board. So it could be a really important power if you're trying to earn those 4 different corners on the map. So you can buy one of those ability cards. You can buy, only once per game, you can buy one of the scrolls as well. Otherwise, you can buy soldiers. It takes 2 food to buy a soldier, and that's why I found food was the most important resource, because if you had enough food coming in, you could continuously pump out some soldiers, and that gave you more choices later on in the game. And you can upgrade the things you already own. So you can upgrade a soldier. The level of the soldier is the face on top of the die. If you spend 2 wood, you can move it from level 1 to level 2. 2 gold on top of that will move it to level 3. Then you spend 2 food for level 4, 2 wood again, and then 2 gold, and that would get it up to level 6, making it stronger and stronger. There's not much point of doing that with these initial soldiers, because if a soldier founds a city, that city, no matter what the level of the soldier is, the city's only going to be level 1. So you might be wasting those resources if you spend them too soon to upgrade these guys, unless you're planning on starting a battle before all of the cities are founded. A bit challenging because you need the cities to gather those resources. Once the game gets going, you're going to have some cities that are founded, and that's a simple trade. You take 1 soldier off the map and you put one of these big dice in their place. No matter the level of the soldier, you're going to get a city that's level 1, and then you can slowly upgrade that city. I've placed a city here where it's beside 3 wood and 1 food, and you can gather from all of the squares that are adjacent to that city. Once you've upgraded the city to level 2, you can gather out 2 squares away, so it's a wider circle. You'll get more things. You could even get this food from this buffalo token up here, or the buffalo symbol up here at the top. Beyond that, once you're beyond level 2, you don't keep spreading out the influence or the catchment area or whatever you want to call it of the city. Instead, you're increasing the defense, meaning that you're going to need stronger soldiers in order to conquer that city and take it off the map. Once you've gathered and traded your resources, which you don't do until there's a city, once you've upgraded what you've got here on the map or bought something, again, you need resources to do that, so not likely to happen so early in the game. The next phase of your turn is to roll these dice, and these dice are going to determine how far you can move your soldiers. And basically, it's just whatever number you roll, you divide that amount among the soldiers that you want to move. So I could move one soldier 11 spaces if I wanted to with this roll of 11, but likely what's going to happen is I'm going to spread the movement around among the different soldiers here on the map. If I roll doubles, different things can happen. If I roll double ones or double sixes, I can move Gog. And remember, Gog can protect your city from the influence of that angel of retribution. If I roll a double 2 or a double 5, that's when I can move the angel. Then doubles in between allow me to get a free ability card. There's a lot of chance in this game, right? Because this is not only determining how far you move, it's determining some other special things that might happen in the game. And I know that some of the rules are going to change a little bit when this game finally comes out. There are going to be some easier ways maybe to move Gog around the board. We didn't roll very many doubles, so Gog and the Angel pretty much stayed put through the entire game that we played. Eventually, you're going to have a map that looks something like this. You might also have some soldiers placed on the board somewhere. When you recruit a new soldier, he's got to go beside one of the cities that you own. One of the neat things about this game is that if you place a soldier on a space on the map that's outside of any of the areas that you can control, that soldier gathers that resource as well. So if you need some extra gold, you can move a soldier onto a gold space. But now that the cities are established, you can do that first phase of the turn, the gathering resources phase. I mentioned the treasure space earlier, and if your city is surrounding or is next to one of those treasure spaces or 2 spaces away, if it's a level 2 city, each turn when you gather resources, you get to draw a treasure card. Those cards are right here. They're smaller. They've got this same picture of Gog here on the back. And I should say, you know, we've got this giant box with the great big Gog. You've got this little Gog over here, but there's also a 40 centimeter, you can't even call it a miniature. There's a 40 centimeter figure of Gog that they're talking about making for this campaign. That's 16 inches. That's a huge, well, like I said, not a miniature, a huge figure. You know, it's like that Cthulhu figure that I've seen online. But you've got these little cards with a little tiny picture of Gog on them. And these are the treasure cards. You draw one of these and it might be a benefit for you, or it might be some sort of a penalty. Once you've drawn this, you roll a die. If the roll is odd, then you can take the benefit that the card gives you, or you can choose if it's a penalty. You wouldn't want to take a penalty, so you'd say, no, that's not going to have any impact. If you roll an even number, though, then the treasure card applies to all the other players except for you. In this case, you've got a card that has a little hex underneath the sword that says +1. This is going to allow you to increase the level of your soldier, of one soldier by 1. Some of them have a picture of 3 soldiers underneath with the +1. Then you can increase 3 soldiers. In this case, if I manage to apply this, I could move this little guy up to a number 2. But here's the problem. Like I said, if I roll even, everyone else is going to get to do that instead of me. So again, there's lots of chance. And I know some folks who play more advanced strategy games would say, oh, there's so much luck involved in this game. And my son who was playing it said, I'm so unlucky. He always says, like I do, the dice hate me. It always feels like things aren't going your way. But certainly there were some negative effects that happened to me, some positive effects that I missed and were given to my son. And the same thing happened vice versa. It was totally random. There are some game designers I know that see that element of chance as being something that can draw a player back to play the game again. If it's entirely based on skill and they're not very good, they might not want to come back and try that game. But if they can blame a loss on some bad luck, then they might be more likely to come back and try the game again, because bad luck doesn't last forever. The dice don't always hate you, no matter how much you think that they do. You might lose a city level because of a volcano. You might lose a soldier because of a volcano. You might be able to gain some resources. In this case, you'd gain 3 wood, or all the other players would gain 3 wood, depending on how your roll went. So you're really, hoping that you're going to roll the right number to make sure that the other players get the disadvantage or that you get the advantage. So if I had rolled an odd number here where this would apply to me, I could choose to say, no, I'm not going to drop my city down by 1 level. But if I roll an even number and it goes to the other players, they don't have a choice. They have to take that penalty. Eventually, you'll probably get some more soldiers on the map, since soldiers are the main way that you're going to interact with the world. And here's what happens. You can see I've placed a couple of the red soldiers in the corner, and they're working towards that win state if you're able to get soldiers in all 4 corners of the map. You can conquer a city, though, if you surround it at the end of your turn, if it's surrounded by 3 soldiers of the same level as the city. That would take the city off the board, and all of the conquering soldiers get to go up 1 level for conquering that city. So you'd wind up here with 3 level 2 soldiers instead of level 1, and the red player loses one of their cities. They could still found another city on an empty space on the board, but then they'd have to move their soldiers around and find a space to build that city, and upgrading a city requires resources, and you're not going to be able to gather as many resources once you've lost that city. Now, all of these, the food and the gold and the wood that you would have been able to gather with that city, now they're gone because your city has been conquered. Like I said, if all 3 of red cities are conquered, and that's how I lost the game when I was playing with my son, if all 3 cities are conquered, then you're out of the game. So you may kind of be racing to get some soldiers out so that you can rebuild cities once your cities start to get knocked off the map. One rule I didn't mention about founding cities is that they have to be at least 2 spaces apart. You don't want them to overlap too much, honestly, in terms of their resource gathering. You want to spread them out so that you can gather as many resources as possible. You can, like I said at the beginning, only hold 5 of each resource unless you have a barn. One of the treasure cards will allow you to build a barn. That bumps your resource storage capability up to 6 of each resource. Or if you then upgrade your barn, you can bump it up to a 7 instead of a 6. And that gives you lots of options when you're playing the game. This is a game, as you can see, where there are some spatial skills really that you're using. You're moving these guys around the map and trying to optimize the spacing of your city, but really it's so much about budgeting. You never quite, and I really found that I never quite had enough resources to do all the things that I might like to do on a turn, and especially once my son started chasing after my cities. I was trying to get to the corners and he was trying to chase after me to eliminate my cities before I could do that. And so I had fewer and fewer resources as I went, but you're planning ahead to meet that win condition, and you're trying really hard to budget your resources to make the purchases that you need to work towards that goal. We've talked over and over and over again about working towards future goal and what are the skills that are involved in working towards a future goal. It's the executive functioning skills, planning ahead, approaching things in an organized way, resisting temptation when something comes up that seems like a more attractive or a more fun option, but that doesn't follow in with your plan. Being flexible. All of those are things that would fall under the executive functioning umbrella. And that is Battle of Gog in a nutshell. A quick strategy game with lots of chance involved. Thanks again to the designers for sending this game along. It's going to show up on Kickstarter later on in the spring. And if you have any comments or questions or suggestions, you can leave them in the comment section below this video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and previous episodes are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we are all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.